Hey, hello and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca, and we are joined by a very, very special guest host today. Today on the podcast, we have Mark Ragan. Hey, Mark, how's it going?
It's great, Toni. Good to see you, too.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on. So Mark is the managing director of the Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company, BETC, also an occasional actor, seen in past Colorado Shakespeare Festival shows, and also a big arts philanthropist in Colorado, and someone who has a lot of thoughts about theater in general. So we're going to get into all kinds of topics. And also, Mark, you've been planning a big theater trip to New York City through BETC, and we want to talk about that more in our main segment because we wanted to talk about theater tourism and how to go see theater outside of Colorado. As great as Colorado is for theater, there's definitely lots else out there, especially in the big cities.
Yeah,
cool. So we are going to. Oh yeah, go ahead, Mark.
No, that's fine. Go ahead, Toni.
I was just going to say we will dig into all of that and more in our main segment. But first, just wanted to say a quick thank you to all of our listeners for tuning into another episode of the OnStage Colorado Podcast. We are the official podcast of OnStageColorado.com and the only weekly podcast dedicated to covering the live performance scene around the state of Colorado. So thanks for tuning in and taking time to talk theater with us.
Yeah, I like the official tag, Toni. Like, there's all these bootleg podcasts out there pretending to be us. This is the real one.
We're the official one. Don't get it twisted, folks.
That's right. So it's March 4th. As you're hearing it, we're recording on Monday, March 3rd. So we'll talk about new shows and some news, and there's plenty to talk about about the theater scene in Colorado all over.
Yeah, and then later in this episode, we are going to share Alex's interview with the folks from the Millibo Art Theatre about its upcoming festival in March. So who'd you talk to and what'd you learn, Alex?
Yeah, I talked to one of the founders, Birgitta DePree, at Millibo to hear more about this upcoming, it's kind of a small play festival, but they've got a number of different shows that are related to like COVID, the pandemic. And it's called The Lost Years. So it sounds really cool. And, it's really, a lot of people now are just going, holy shit, it's been 5 years. It was just 5 years ago that all of a sudden things were starting to crumble. And I still remember, a lot of people remember, like, what's the last thing you saw? And I remember I was at the SpongeBob musical at the Denver Center Buell Theater. I think it was March 9th when all of a sudden everybody was looking around and there were a lot of empty seats and we were like, what's going on?
Yeah, my last production was definitely it was a college production because I was an undergrad at the time. But it's crazy, 5 years since COVID. So it's cool that Millibo Art Theatre is kind of creating a space that people can reflect on that and also think about how theater has changed and still needs to continue evolving to meet the present moment we're in.
Yeah, for sure. So as far as what we saw, I did not see any standalone plays. I was at the Colorado New Play Summit all weekend, as you were, Toni, at the Denver Center. Right. So we saw 4 new plays, 4 new readings of plays that are sort of in development. Bog Friends by Sebastian Alberti, If God Were Blue by Carrie Perloff, Rust on Bone by Bianca Sams, and How to Conquer America, A Mostly True History of Yogurt by David Myers. And they also announced the next year's shows from the previous summit. So they're going to be doing Godspeed by Terrence Anthony, so this will be winter 26. And they're also doing Cowboys and East Indians by Nina McConaughey and Matthew Spangler, which is one that we remembered pretty well as being a very unique script, right, Toni?
It is. There is a massive twist that I will not reveal that comes in the second act of the play that just like you will not be able to predict it. I guarantee you that. Even with this tag here that says there is a massive twist and spoiler, I guarantee you will not be able to know where the story is going to go. It was really an engaging script. So I was not shocked to see Cowboys and East Indians being selected. I was a little bit more surprised to see Godspeed by Terrence Anthony selected, as that was a more historical piece. It was nearly 3 hours in the original reading. It was a little bit more dry, but I'm wondering if maybe the playwright in that time period, since it debuted at the summit, has done some strategic edits to kind of tighten the script up and really hone in on the central story that he's trying to tell.
Right. So yeah, but this year's new play summit was we thought at least 3 out of the 4 plays were pretty strong. I would say, but we're not. They asked us not to review them, so we won't get into like what we thought about them so much. But definitely saw some good stuff, some really great acting and directing on just on the reading level. These are really nicely staged readings, and it was a lot of fun. It was sold out, packed. So lots of theater lovers there, and people from other cities. Sitting next to a woman who's I think she was a literary manager for a big theater in Cincinnati. So you have people coming around to hear new plays from around the country, as well as just theater lovers, and lots of local actors and artistic directors and folks like that. So yeah, a lot of fun. And we'll be hearing more about that as they announce those shows. So what else did you see this past week, Tony?
I caught 2 other productions in addition to the 4 readings as a part of the New Play Summit. I checked out Mean Girls, the touring non-union production that came through the Denver Center, which I thought was a real mixed bag. There were some really fine performances in the piece, but it was a technical disaster. It started 20 minutes late. They literally had to the stage manager had to call a stop in the middle of the first act because there was a massive technical failure. So the show quite literally paused for 4 minutes while they had to reset and then get on with it. Lighting cues were a disaster. I have never seen so many actors just all alone in the dark on stage at the Denver Center. It was a really sloppy production. And when you are paying a couple $100s for tickets at the Denver Center, you really expect to see a little bit higher quality of the show there.
Right.
And so
that was opening night.
That was opening night. So I wrote about that in my review for Denver Westward and just kind of talked a little bit about some of those issues. Again, as I mentioned, the show itself it's fine. It's Mean Girls with some pretty serviceable songs in there. Performances are pretty strong, but technically the show just did not click.
The Knives Out in your review at Westward. I saw it in the touring production in 2022, but maybe it was a union one because I don't remember anything like that. It was pretty sharp and then also you saw Guys and Dolls.
That's right, over at Vintage Theater. This is my first time ever seeing Guys and Dolls on stage. I've seen the movie. I have listened to the musical, but it's been years since I've engaged with Guys and Dolls in any capacity. And I guess with the rise of like FanDuel and sports betting, there's never been a better time than to do Guys and Dolls and talk about maybe some of the problems of gambling, how you can lose all of your money through that. And so it was a pretty well done production, very slickly directed by Carter Edward Smith over at Vintage. I believe this is his second time in the director's seat after last year's 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. Got some really good choreography, and the voices on Vintage's stage are top notch. Just really lovely renditions of all of the songs that you probably already know.
Mark, what about you? I don't want to put you on the spot. Did you see anything in the last week or so that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I saw Morning After Grace and at Miners Alley with my good friend Tammy Meningini, who was in Enemy of the People, Betsy's Enemy of the People. And then I saw Breadcrumbs at the local theater company, which Betsy is sponsoring.
Yeah. Both good shows that we've talked about on the pod and reviewed on the site. So good to see you getting out there. So
what did you all think of?
Cool.
What did you all think of Morning After Grace? I'm curious.
Yeah, we thought it was pretty funny. I preferred the first act, I think, to the second act, in which I thought that there were a couple pacing issues, and the script itself started to feel just a hair repetitive. In particularly when you had the repeated nature of there's this kind of device in the play in which 2 characters will have a fake therapy session between each other, and they'll just have to listen, and that's repeated in the second act a couple of times, and I thought it was repeated to a lesser effect each time it showed up. So I liked it. There were some excellent performances, but the script left me with a couple of wanting a little bit more in places. What about you?
I couldn't agree more. The performances were amazing. Tammy's such an amazing actress. For those listeners who haven't seen the play, the first 5 to 7 minutes of the play, there's no dialogue. It's just Tammy being Tammy waking up in a strange man's lap and just being incredibly funny without saying a word for about 7 minutes. And I also found the play to be incredibly witty the first 45 minutes, but I would say after that, it starts to try your patience. The play, it goes on far too long. It meanders. I think it loses its way. It doesn't really know what it wants to be. It's almost as if the play was writing itself and just kind of meandering.
I think that's a really interesting way to put it, particularly, and it really feels that way because the title is Morning After Grace, and so much of the play is just that one morning after Grace's funeral. But then in the final, 30-ish minutes of the play, it jumps forward in time, and then it's not really even about that premise anymore. And so it kind of gets lost. I think that's a really good way to put it, Mark.
Yeah, it just seemed like it seemed like there were 3 false endings, and every time you thought it was going to end and the lights were going to go down, the car turned the corner and started climbing up the hill again. And then now for something completely different. And that's what I meant by trying the patience of the audience, But some of the funniest lines, though, that I've heard this year, I mean, the writing is incredibly witty, and the performances, as you said, were incredible. Just really wonderful.
All right, well, let's switch to some news. Toni, what do you got on your list here?
Yeah, so I figured since we've got Mark here, we could dig into this story about the city of Boulder's misallocation of 2A funds. So I've been reporting on this story since last April for Boulder Weekly, and then last week, John Moore of the Denver Gazette shared an update. So, Mark, can you talk a little bit about what the spirit of the 2A ballot measure was, and why Boulder arts leaders are so frustrated with the city right now?
Yeah. It's really a complex issue. In November of 2023, arts organizations got together and with the city and put together a compromised ballot 2A measure. And not to bore listeners, but essentially it was going to raise about $7+ million. Half would go to city services, the other half would go to the arts. And arts organizations.
So that city services include the fire, emergency response services, homeless services, and then other general fund purposes.
Yeah. And arts organizations were just ecstatic. They thought, oh my gosh, this is great. We won the vote by 75% margin, which is really unheard of. But then a few months ago, we learned that the city took 41% of that money and allocated it toward things like administrative overhead, staffing, budget reserves, and really to rub salt in the wound, art consultants. And I have to be careful here because the city didn't violate any laws. It was within its rights to do that. I mean, it could allocate that money to staffing and administrative overhead, but that was not the spirit of the agreement. The spirit of the agreement was that this was going to go into direct assistance. And so a lot of people felt betrayed. A lot of the arts leaders like Nick Forrester at E-Town and Jan Burton, who was former city council member, Deborah Malden. I mean, it just was against the spirit of the agreement. It was kind of a sleight of hand on the part of the city manager. And the way they did that is they took the existing art staff, which had been funded out of the general fund, and just wiped that out and replaced it with ballot 2A money.
Yeah, so that the existing sales tax that generates $3.6 million in revenue. Now, instead of all of that 3.6 going back into local arts organizations or being made available for programming or operational grants through the city, that's now part of it. A pretty sizable portion of it is being used to pay for city expenditures.
And the art consultant that is putting together what's called the blueprint for the future. And which
they've been talking about for years.
Yeah, and also that
blueprint's been in creation for a while.
Yeah, and I know. So what we did is we launched a campaign Create Boulder created a committee. I'm on the committee with several other people, Nick Chase from local theater company, Marie Juliette Bird from the new local, an arts collective. And we decided to fight back. And we're fighting back, really trying to be the squeaky wheel that says, to the city, we're going to stand up for ourselves this time. You have no right to do this. Well, they actually do have a right to do it. We just don't think it's in the spirit of the agreement. Whether we succeed or not is anybody's guess. I mean, we launched a petition drive, and I think we're close to 1,700 signatures after a week. But, we're trying to get the word out to Boulder residents that, their vote was not honored in a way. So we'll see how it goes. But, the old phrase, you can't fight City Hall. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
And I know all of this is coming at a time when the city is courting Sundance with some very lovely write-offs and incentives to come in. And so arts leaders are like, where's all this for us? We've been supporting the city with our art creation by local people for years, decades even. And now you're giving all these funds to Sundance. So where can people go? What can people do if they want to help support this petition and help support the cause?
Change.org. If they go to change.org, go to the search bar and just put in Boulder 2A restore art funding, or just Boulder 2A, they'll find it. But to the Sundance issue, I think that's something I talk about a lot, and it makes a lot of Boulder people nervous. Mark, stop it. Stop mentioning Sundance. But the fact of the matter is, I want to mention Sundance because they should know. They should know that the city is on their knees, begging them to come and talking about what an arts mecca Boulder is. But meanwhile, they're shunning the very local arts organizations that have pumped millions of dollars. Millions. I mean, BETC alone has probably pumped $1.5 million into the local economy, not counting the Boulder Philharmonic, the Boulder Ballet, local theater company, art galleries. And so I think it's it's fair game to mention the Sundance angle.
Well, on slightly better news, I saw this article in Denver about something I didn't know about. So Loretta Heights was a Catholic boarding school in Southwest Denver for many years, and it closed, I guess, a few years ago. But they have this enormous theater. So it's a mid-century theater with it says that right now it has about 900 seats, but they're going to do some changes. Of course, they got to do some ADA stuff and things like that. So it'll reduce the number of seats, but still 750. So it's a $60 million first initial phase. And then so this is supplied by the city's 2021 RISE bond, and the remaining funds coming from the Denver Arts and Venues budget. So Denver beating out Boulder for sure on the arts
so it's
funding scene.
Yeah, I mean, Golden's beating out. Everybody's beating out Boulder.
Yeah. But anyway, I just saw that and I was like, oh, cool. It's always wonderful to hear of a theater opening or reopening in this case rather than closing. So look forward to that. And apparently they're aiming to finish by the end of 2027. So a little bit, but not super long. So I thought that was a cool story. Anything else, Toni?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that nearly 500 people gathered to watch the Academy Awards last night, hosted on March 2nd at the Denver Sea Film Center. So this is the nonprofit movie house in Denver area, and it's been a bit of a rough year for the movies, with attendance down 3% from last year and 23% from 2029. So this was a pretty big show of local support for the industry in an event dubbed the brightest night in Hollywood because of an ongoing rights dispute that forbids Denver Film or anyone else from actually hosting a party that's called the Oscars or Academy Awards viewing, which I just think is fun legal semantics. It's a really silly workaround they have to do in there. But
it's like the Super Bowl, if you have to call it the big game, if you're not.
Big game. That's right. But at this event, there was a ballot competition with people betting on all the categories, drag performers and other entertainers, and tons of people in costumes. So, did you guys check out the ceremony at all?
We did.
You mean the
Yeah,
Oscars?
we watched it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's right.
We can say it here.
Yeah. I made it all the way to the end, although, like my daughter said, she'd never heard most of the films. I had not seen Anora. I had not seen Emilia Perez. Now I want to. I'm dying to see them, and I guess that's why the Oscars exist, because now I want to see all those movies.
I had only seen Dune 2 and Wicked, so I was pretty much. But I thought it was a fun show. I thought it was great to have Conan there as host. He's a genuine.
My wife was hopping mad that Wicked didn't win anything. I think it won one award, and she was just beside.
Yeah. Next time around, it got Lord of the Ring.
It was production design and costume design. So it walked away with 2. But that's it, for a film like Wicked, it got 10 nominations to only walk away with 2 below the line wins like that. It's a bit disappointing.
But I think we mentioned this before. It got Lord of the Rings because there's a sequel coming up. They'll probably get more after that one. Because
I'm one of the few people. Don't tell my wife. Thank God she doesn't listen to this podcast. I didn't like it. I'm like one of the only people in the world that was bored out of my mind by Wicked. I'll take the stage play. I'll take the stage play any day. Yeah.
So Toni, there was a decent Colorado representation at the Oscars. Can you let us know what those were?
Yeah, there were 4 Coloradans who were nominated for Academy Awards. Brady Corbet, who grew up in the Roaring Fork Valley, was nominated for Best Direction and Original Screenplay for The Brutalist. Chris Sanders, who was the screenwriter and director of The Wild Robot, was raised in the Colorado Springs area and graduated from Arvada High School. That film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards last night. Anju, which was nominated for Best Live Action Short Film, was created by Adam J. Graves, who was a philosophy professor at MSU and is also produced by his wife, Sutro Matia, and Sabrina Murje Niam, who is a graduate of St. Mary's Academy and the University of Denver, is the executive producer of Sugarcane, which was nominated for Best Feature Documentary. However, for us here watching in Colorado, we did have to watch them all walk away empty-handed, as none of our locals won anything last night. The Brutalist did pick up a couple of awards, so Brady Corbet is probably feeling okay, but none of these individual Coloradans get to have a little gold min in their hand.
Yeah. Well, I would say nominated is still a win. It's just not
absolutely
the top prize. So, all right. Well, Mark, we wanted to have you here to talk about, in addition to some of the things about Boulder and BETC, about theater tourism. And I thought of you because, we know Colorado's a wonderful place to see theater, but there's also lots of other great theater going on around the country. And I know you're a frequent traveler to New York, and I think you go to London occasionally to see shows. And so I thought maybe you could kick it off by telling us about this upcoming trip that BETC is sponsoring to go to New York. What's that all about?
Yeah, so this is something a lot of theater companies do. I think DCPA did one to London. In fact, we want to do one to London next year. This is our first attempt. Yeah, and we're seeing 4 Broadway productions. Gypsy, which in my mind is the absolute top of the list. I saw Gypsy first few weeks it came out and was floored. I thought it was Audra McDonald delivered in ways that you would expect. I mean, I said in my Facebook review that they should put her on suicide watch, because by the end of that show, she is so utterly decimated by the character and her acting that I was worried about her health. I call it the King Lear of musicals, but it was absolutely amazing. Then we're doing Redwood with Idina Menzel, who of course was the original Elphaba in Wicked. Death Becomes Her, a musical comedy, and then Sunset Boulevard. And we still have one off-Broadway show to put on the schedule. I I try to get to New York 6 to 8 times a year, and Jess just came back. Jessica Robley, our artistic director at BETC, just came back. And I'll tell you the plays that if I wish they were playing when we were going, but they're not. English is an amazing production. I don't know if you've heard of English.
I can't say that I have. What's it about?
Yeah, it's an all Iranian cast. It was a Pulitzer Prize winning play about Iranians learning English as a second language in Tehran. And it's really about the correlation between language and identity. And especially with folks that are thinking about emigrating to the US. So it's just filled with all sorts of interesting personalities and actors, but it's really about, what is it like to become an immigrant? What is it like to go to a foreign country, and how it's not just about learning the language. It's about reorienting your own identity to becoming someone new. And it took off Broadway by storm. I mean, it's amazing. The performances are out of this world. All Iranian cast, just Iranian Americans, just amazing. That would be my number one recommendation to anyone heading to New York. Unfortunately, in early February, The Cult of Love on Broadway closed. And that is a play that if the rights became available tomorrow, Jessica and I would grab them instantly. Unbelievable show about family dysfunction, comedy, music, tragedy. It's got everything. And it was a beautiful show, The Cult of Love. And so those were two of my picks that if they were there when we're going on the trip, which they won't be, those would be the off-Broadway productions that I would choose, those two.
So what is the experience like going on?
What's that, Alex?
I was just going to ask, like, generally speaking, if you go on a tour like this, you're part of a group moving around
Yes.
to all the stuff kind of en masse, and so you're also going to do things like go to MoMA and Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, places like that. So it sounds like a blast.
We're doing the Museum of Broadway. We're doing tours of Lincoln Center, the Hudson Theater. We have a breakfast talk with actors and producers. We have a tour of Carnegie Hall. In fact, I'm going to be so exhausted, I'm going to have to take like 3 naps a day. I mean, being in New York is tiring enough. But this is the first time, by the way, that I've ever done anything like this. I've never done anything like this before. Normally, I go to New York and I'm on my own. So it's $5,000, which I think is kind of a steal when you look at Broadway prices and the fact that several dinners
you can't afford not to go.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're up to like 29 people now. But
great.
Oh, wow, that's a good sized group.
Yeah. And it's all BETC patrons, which is the way we intended it.
That's super cool to be able to go to New York and have a theater experience surrounded by other people who are equally as invested in all of the art that you're about to experience. So
exactly.
If somebody was going to go to New York, though, by themselves, like you say, you do like 6 to 8 times a year, do you have any tips for how you might do that? Like how to get tickets or lodging or things that you should just avoid?
Yeah, well, I'll give you the biggest tip of all. I hesitate to say this because I'm not sure I want people going there. The best deal in Midtown Manhattan, 5 minutes, 10-minute walk to all the shows, is the Warwick Hotel. And I tell everybody who's going, it's a sleeper of a hotel, even though it's an international chain with its own free club that you can join. I never go anywhere else. And the reason for that is you can really spread out. You can have a suite there, a suite for what would normally be a tiny single room at the Intercontinental Hotel. And so it's the best kept secret in New York. And I have no gain by this, by the way. I just telling you the God's honest truth. You go there, you pay what you're going to pay the Intercontinental Hotel, and you get a 600 square foot suite with a living room and king size bed. So that's where I go. And I also like it because I jog and walk in Central Park every day. And so it's a 2-minute walk to Central Park. It's about 3 blocks away from Central Park. And I'm addicted to that area. I love it. As far as ticket purchasing goes, of course, you've got the Times Square half-priced tickets where everybody lines up on the day of. And you'd be surprised. Right. You'll be surprised how many plays that you can get at that half-price ticket booth. And it's not always what you think it is. I think people assume it's going to be the dregs. It's not.
No, I agree. That ticket station right there, it's like the red booths or whatever. That's my go-to. Anytime I'm going to New York, I rarely purchase any show tickets in advance. I just show up to the station and see what I can get, because you often will be able to go and see like a newer musical or something that's very exciting. That would normally be a couple $100 for. I get tickets often for like $40-$50 from there to really good seats too. So
a couple of other favorite things that I would love to pass on, one of which I'm kind of slightly embarrassed by. One of my favorite places in New York, and this is the embarrassing part of it, is Carmine's on Times Square. I never miss going to Carmine's, even though it is like the Disneyland of restaurants. I mean, most people who avoid tourist sites are bowing their head in shame that I'm even saying this. But I just love I love the festive nature of it. I love the excitement of it. The food is out of this world. Touristy or not, the food is out of this world. So that's one thing. And then of course, Sardi's is next door. I remember going to Sardi's with my daughter when Al Pacino was in Merchant of Venice and seeing him in a corner eating between his matinee and evening performance. That's the kind of thing you see at Sardi's all the time. They had a little corner set up for him, but and it's a great, both of those restaurants are great, but Carmine's is absolutely the best.
Is that an Italian place or a deli or what?
It's an Italian place that specializes in platters of food that could, feed the 3rd Infantry Division. I mean, it is. And what's really funny about it is you can't order anything small. Like if you go in there, you're going to go out with a bag of food. Like I sit at the bar. I've gotten to know the bartender over the years, so when he sees me come in, he gives me the inside track. Because, by the way, you have to make reservations about 3 months ahead of time or you'll never get a table. But you can always try the bar. And Junior at the bar, who's very proud of his status as the best bartender in New York, if you know Junior, you can get a little stool at the bar. But it's especially in the Christmas season, it's such a festive place to go.
Yeah. So if you're looking, if you go to New York, you might hit I don't know, if you don't have $1 million, you might hit a Broadway show or maybe something off Broadway. Do you ever go to any of there's so many tiny little theaters in New York doing all kinds of weird stuff. Some of it's pretty off the wall. Do you ever get out to any of that when you're there?
Yeah, I can't name all the theaters. I forget their names as soon as I leave. But I remember going to see this amazing prequel to the Crucible. Was it called The Good Proctor, I believe? And I saw this 2 years ago at a theater that I didn't even know existed in the West Village. And I walk everywhere, by the way, in New York. I walk everywhere. I just make the time. And I was just stunned. The acting was superb. The show was well written. But there are theaters like this all over the place. Unfortunately, the Cherry Lane Theater, which is a play that someday I wanted to take a Betsy production to New York, and I wanted to take it to the Cherry Lane. Unfortunately, that was purchased 3 years ago by the same independent film company that won the Best Picture last night. or was it?
Oh, Neon.
No, sorry, it wasn't. It was one of the shows, Tony. It's A24. They just Cherry
Yeah.
Lane Theater, which is one of the most iconic theaters off Broadway, started by Edna St. Vincent Millay in the 1920s with Eugene O'Neill. And they purchased several years ago, and they just haven't done anything with it. Or if they have, it's not visible to the public. They haven't changed it. They haven't, by all appearances, it's still there. But there's no more theater there. A24, I think, is the name of the production company.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it's just so much to see. I saw Aubrey Plaza in a theater company in Chelsea when she did Danny and the Deep Blue Sea, her first ever Broadway play. And there were 90 to 100 seats. Only in New York can you see somebody like Aubrey Plaza in a 90-seat theater. And the reason for that is because it's not because they're there to make money. It's there because they're getting their acting cred, their street cred up.
Yeah.
I would love to know what Aubrey Plaza was paid to in a 90-seat theater. My guess is
you think she got standard union rate, or you think she negotiated a little bit better payment?
Yeah, because there's no way they made any money if they paid her anything like what she would get in film. And she was amazing, by the way. She was absolutely amazing. And then I saw Patrick Page in the same theater when he did his one-man Shakespeare show recently. Devils and All the Devils Are Here, I think was the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's
I'm so jealous, Mark. That sounds awesome.
That's what's wonderful about New York, though, and that's why people should always keep their eyes on off-Broadway shows, because it's not just scrappy theater companies. It's people like Patrick Page, who your listeners may know as Hades in Hadestown for several years, and a very accomplished Shakespearean actor. And here he is performing. You're 2 feet from him, and he's performing this amazing Shakespeare production, and there's 90 seats. Only in New York.
Yeah. So when you are going to New York and you're watching all these plays, you're also the managing director of BETC. How much of it is also show selection for the company that you run back in Boulder? All of it. Yeah.
All of it, except maybe if I'm with my daughter, she'll want to see a musical. So we'll see musicals. I saw Gypsy because Gypsy is just such a classic, not because we would ever produce it. But most of what I do is I'm shopping for productions. That's how I got Coal Country. Those of you, the listeners, will know that Coal Country was the first ever play I did at BETC, produced at BETC. And I got that because I was walking past Cherry Lane Theater, and it was the last day of the show. And the playwright was there, and I hit her up at the end of the play. I said, I love your play. Can I do it in Boulder? And that's how that relationship started. I can give you a little bit of news here. So Jess and I
I'd love that.
We just nailed down our season. There's a couple of shows we're still waiting on rights for. But the big news is we're going to do Mary Jane, which was Rachel McAdams' vehicle last spring. I saw it, when it was playing on Broadway, fell in love with it. It's an Amy Herzog play that's loosely based on her life and it was just such a moving, poignant, beautiful play that I thought so we grabbed it right away, and we've got the rights for that. We'll be doing that at both the Denver Savoy and BETC. Then Brooklyn Laundry. On another shopping trip, I saw Brooklyn Laundry with John Patrick Shanley, his new play. Those listeners will know that Shanley was the author of Moonstruck. That's what he's most famous for, but he also was the author of Doubt, which was on Broadway a few years ago, and Danny and the Deep Blue Sea. So we grabbed that one. So there's 2 that came from that trip. And there are probably others that I'm forgetting. And then Jess went, after me and did the same kind of shopping trip, looking for great plays.
Do you have any idea when the full season will be announced?
Yeah. So we're putting the finishing touches on it now. We're waiting for, one other play that we just got the rights for is The Thin Place. I don't know if you know this. It's really going to be a great September, October Halloween play. And we just got the rights for that. And trying to think if I'm forgetting, we're interested in Vladimir, which is right off of Broadway. Just was at the Manhattan Theatre Club recently with Norbert Leo Butz. And so that's another one we're looking at. I'd say, Toni, we'll probably have this all nailed down within 2 weeks. And then we're going to start scheduling auditions soon after that.
Great. Well, we appreciate that sneak peek into Betsy's season. Can't wait to hear what else is coming up. Those sound great. Yeah. So Thin Place is Lucas Hanath play. So definitely seen.
You know what? The biggest, just because you're insiders, you're going to love this. You know the hardest decision to make when you're a theater company? The damn Christmas show. What are you going to do for the holiday show? And we dodged that bullet last year with Jess's amazing adaptation of Little Women, which nobody really would think of as a Christmas show, but it kind of is. And I say we dodged that bullet because we're committed to never, ever doing the Christmas Carol. Now, there I said it. I'm on tape.
What about Tuna Christmas?
What's that?
I said, what about Tuna Christmas? Christmas Story.
It's a struggle every year. What are we going to do?
It's tough.
And we've danced around the idea of not doing a holiday show at all. Just do something that has kind of a holiday feel to it, but nothing specifically about the holidays. I still want to get into the Christmas Carol trap.
I agree. There's only so many times that you can see a Christmas Carol as a viewer before you just start to want to rip your hair out. It's a great story, amazing message. I agree. I think everybody in the current administration should watch A Christmas Carol on repeat because so then maybe they could get some of those themes into their head. But God, I could go without having to see another Christmas Carol. So I appreciate you, Mark. Thank you for not making us sit through A Christmas Carol at Betsy.
Although there are some one-man Christmas carols or one-actor Christmas carols that are kind of interesting. The concept, right? Patrick Stewart did it on Broadway for years, where he just played all the parts. That would be, because of it, it's kind of a walking a tightrope thing. That would be kind of a fun event to see.
Right. Cool. Well, thanks for walking us through the New York thing. I know there's certainly other places to go, but I don't think we have time to cover them today. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hit our Colorado headliners as well as my interview with Birgitta from Millibo Art Theatre. So stick around. We'll be right back. The OnStage Colorado podcast is supported in part by the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center, whose production of Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed, The Rock Experience, runs through March 30th. It's a rock and roll parable with a significant message for today's audience based on the hit children's book by Mo Willems. Tickets at fac.coloradocollege.edu. We're also supported by the Aurora Fox Arts Center, whose production of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime runs March 21st through April 13th. The play earned 6 Toni Awards, including Best Play, and delves into the mind of a remarkable young man on a quest for the truth. Tickets at aurorafoxartscenter.org. Also supporting OnStage Colorado is Denver's Curious Theatre, presenting Downstate March 13th through April 13th. This hard-hitting play shares the story of 4 men convicted of sex crimes who share a group home post-incarceration. Tickets at curioustheatre.org. OnStage Colorado receives support from Candlelight, presenting Oklahoma, running through March 30th in Johnstown. Tickets at coloradocandlelight.com. Support for OnStage Colorado also comes from the Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company, BETC, whose staged reading series, Plays with Fire, runs March 7th through 30th at the Boulder Dairy Center. Tickets at BETC.org. And OnStage Colorado is brought to you by the Town Hall Arts Center, presenting Night Mother through March 9th. Featuring Billy McBride and Megan Vandehey, Night Mother is a poignant and powerful exploration of love, loss, and the complexities of human connection. Tickets at townhallartscenter.org. All right, we are back and ready to hit this week's Colorado headliner. So these are some of the upcoming shows we think you should know about, and in no particular order. Tony, what have you got to start?
Kick us off with something out in Telluride. So the Telluride Theatre Company out there is doing a fringe festival at the Palm Theatre that starts March 4th and runs through the 9th. So this is a celebration of experimental performance art that showcases a diverse range of disciplines, including theater, dance, music, magic, and participatory experiential performances. So the festival aims to create a platform for emerging and established artists to share their visions with that mountain community out there. Lineup includes productions like The Constellations by Nick Payne, Will You Be My Baby by Alison Tarwater, Devil See Magic by Help Whittle, and so much more. So this is a Telluride Theater. They're always doing kind of out there things. They're not just kind of your by your book mountain town theater group that's just doing your big splashy musicals and your well-known plays. They always are kind of on the cutting edge. So this very much fits their brand out there.
Yeah, they're heavy into burlesque too, and Kevin Douglas, a friend of the pod, who's down there now. You can say hi to him down there. Was telling us about how one of the founders kind of came out of the burlesque world or something like that. So that's why it's kind of a big part of their programming. So on the other end of the spectrum, I had a couple. I'm going to do two here. So two for the family. Dogman, the musical, at the Newman Center, March 8th through 9th. This is at the DU Denver area. So this is based on best-selling series by Dave Pilkey, who I think was the guy that did Captain Underpants too. It's a production about Dogman, who has the head of a dog and the body of a policeman, and loves to fight crime and chew on the furniture. So that'll be at the Newman Center March 8th and 9th, and that's a touring production, so it should be pretty cool. And the other one is this is an interesting one. So Hansel and Gretel is going to be at the Parker Pace Center on March 8th. I think it's 2 performances. And it's a production by Opera Colorado. So it's for the kids, get a little taste of opera type stuff. So that's coming up at the Pace Center.
Yeah, those are 60-minute productions, usually by a smaller group of actors. They're all sung in English, so you don't have to worry about trying to translate the opera from Italian or anything. So it just sounds like fun series. Yeah. My next pick is also something you might be able to bring the kiddos to. It is Alice, parentheses, in Wonderland, in parentheses. This is done by the Colorado Ballet at the Ellie Coffins Opera House in Denver, March 7th through the 16th. And it follows Alice down the rabbit hole in a ballet that is infused with humor, whimsy, and athleticism. It's got music by composer Matthew Pierce, bringing to life that score, larger-than-life sets and costumes, and a host of Lewis Carroll's magical characters. So I've seen some of the production photos for that one, and it definitely looks very whimsical. The makeup design alone looks like it's worth the price of admission.
Okay, cool. My next one is from the Arts Hub in Lafayette. They're doing School of Rock, March 7th through 16th. So this is at least the third production of School of Rock that we've had in Colorado in the last year and a half.
That's right.
Great show. Nothing new, but they've been doing a good job up there at the Arts Hub. And so for folks in the that neck of the woods, that's an opportunity for you to see the story about a ne'er-do-well sort of old school guitarist based on the film with Jack Black. And how he sort of finagles his way into this prep school, and hijinks ensue. So that's School of Rock, Arts Hub Lafayette, March 7th through 16th.
My next headliner is one that maybe you can help me out with, Mark, because it's about BETC's upcoming Plays with Fire at the Dairy Arts Center in Boulder. So this is a series of staged readings that's going to be happening March 7th through the 30th. It's the public events are going to feature works including The Sound Inside by Adam Rapp, Dear Elizabeth by Sarah Rule, Cry It Out by Molly Smith-Metzer, and Spain by Jen Silverman. So can you tell us a little bit more about the Plays with Fire series that BETC does, and who these plays and writers are?
Yeah, the stage readings have been something that Jess and I have programmed from the beginning, and we love doing them. In fact, those of you who are listening, and Alex and Toni, you know that we started our recent production of Hope and Gravity, started as a staged reading at the Savoy last year. And it was, so successful that we decided to do a full production. And, I think the reason why stage readings are so valuable is because, you get to feel the audience. I remember Alex, I think, was there one night. I don't know if you were, Toni, but to hear that crowd laughing so hard at Hope and Gravity, and that crowd not being, theater insiders, was all the evidence I needed that this was a play that was worth paying attention to. And so that kind of led to us doing a full production. On Valentine's week this year, we had Jessica Robley do Maytag Virgin, which was a play that very few people have heard of. And we had people coming up to us after. We had about 150 people in the Grace Gam Theater, or Gordon Gam Theater at the Dairy Arts Center. We had a bunch of people come up to us afterwards and say, "Why don't you do this as a full production?" And so it's just a great way to take out a play for a spin and see, what the reaction is. This began with me very selfishly, because when I saw The Sound Inside, which is a play by Adam Rapp that was a Pulitzer finalist with Mary Louise Parker, I saw that about 4 years ago at the Manhattan Theater Club in New York on one of those shopping trips. And I was blown away. I was just riveted the entire time. That I went back 2 days later and saw it again. So I saw it twice in 1 week. And then I came back to Boulder. This was before I was leading BETC. And it was actually before I was doing much of any theater at all. And I begged the founders of BETC at the time, Stephen Weitz and Rebecca Romali, to do it. I said, "Look, I'll produce this, I'll underwrite it, but we've got to do this show." Well, little did I know that Curious had grabbed the rights and had beaten me to it. So this is my opportunity. The Sound Inside opens next Friday. And this Friday. And Ann Penner is playing Professor Bella Baird, and a young actor who you may know, Nate Cushing, who was in TheaterWorks' recent Henriad series of plays. He played Hotspur in Colorado Springs. He's playing the young man who is Professor Baird's student. It's a great play, and it's really about the relationship between this kind of reclusive professor who's just buried in her books all the time, that doesn't have much of a life, and how her life is changed and stimulated and changed by the student. And you don't know where the play's going. It's kind of a puzzle play in a way. It's a mystery. You don't know. Adam Rapp stays ahead of you the whole time. And I don't want to give it away, but it's deeply poignant. It is at times hilarious, and it's got a wonderful surprise ending. And it's very literate. Adam Rapp is an incredibly good writer. After that, we have a play called Dear Elizabeth, about the relationship between two poets through their letters, Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Robert Lowell. And those of you who know I want to say A.B. Guthrie. It's not A.B. Guthrie. Those of you who know Love Letters, which is a very famous play about two people reading letters. What's that, Alex?
A.R. Gurney.
A.R. Gurney. It's similar to that, but beautiful. Ann Penner is actually directing that, so she's going from performing in my stage reading to acting in Elizabeth. Cry It Out is a look at motherhood and the effects it has on three women and one husband. It's a dramedy, for lack of a better term. And then Spain is entirely new to me, and that's by Jen Silverman. Do you guys know Jen Silverman, by the way? She also...
I do. I'm familiar with the Moors that she's written pretty well. That's the one of her work I'm most familiar with.
And how about Witch? Have you heard of Witch?
I haven't read it. No, I'm familiar with it, though.
Yeah. She's pretty prolific. And Jessica Robley, our artistic director, has been wanting to produce her work for a long time. And Erin Thibodeau, who's our associate producer, who you know, Toni, she's directing it. So we don't sell this as a subscription series. And we charge $12 per reading. You know, as I said in one of my recent marketing promotions, or the cost of a pumpkin spice latte and a half, you know. And we do that for a reason, because it's not a full production. We don't feel like we can charge full production rates. And also, one of the things I want to do at the Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company is create community. And I work at this relentlessly. And the whole idea is to get everybody together after the reading, where the real fun begins. And that's where we have an open conversation about people's thoughts about the play. Most of the plays we choose are deeply lend themselves to analysis and interpretation. And to me, that's really the heart of this. Now, most people have talkbacks after shows all the time. This goes beyond a talkback. This would be almost like a book club to me. And boy, does Betsy have the right people for this. I mean, if you know anything about Betsy's patrons, they love this kind of thing.
I was at the Plays with Fire, several of the readings last year that you all did at the dairy. And it was super fun, exactly like you're saying. And not just a talk back, we turned into each other, to the people who we were seated next to. And there were a person who asked a couple questions to get us started. But we really got to have that conversation first in small groups before bringing it back to the group, which I think was helpful. And if you are a person who is considering doing a talk back, that might be a strategy worth employing, because it creates more community than just Q&A.
Yeah, if it were up to me, and I guess it is up to me, so maybe I'll do this next time. I would make them free. I really would. And the problem with free, I don't know if you know this, but the problem with free is not that it devalues the work. Everybody says it devalues the work. I don't buy that. I don't think free devalues the work at all. What the problem with free is people don't show up. So
yeah, they reserve
what they do is they make a reservation. You sell out your 50 or 60 seats in the Carson Theater overnight. And then half of the people decide the day of the show that, I got something better to do. So that's the problem with free. If I didn't have that no-show issue, I would be offering this entire series for free. You know, you guys have a solution.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, get their license, like at the bar. You know, they have to hold your ID. You get it back when you see the show.
Well, some people.
All right. Well, moving on.
Some people have said take a deposit and then refund them the money when they show up.
Yeah, that would be one way.
Which does lead to one other issue that I did want to just talk about. And Alex, you could edit it out if this goes on too long. Is we got to do something about getting young audiences into our theaters. I know we've been hearing about this for a long time, decades actually. And it just doesn't seem to change. And I'm looking for the two of you for a solution. Tell me what we need to do to get young. And by the way, I mean young, anybody under 55.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I don't know. It's a perplexing thing. And Toni, we should probably maybe make this as a focus of another podcast session, because it's a big topic, and maybe we can have you back on, Mark. But
okay,
it really is a head scratcher to know how to approach that, because you'd like to say, well, I could young people are always looking for something really inexpensive, unless they're going to a concert, in which case they'll pay $200 for a ticket, which is another kind of thing to throw in the mix. But of course, theaters can't give away everything for free or for low cost, because they get the cost of production and stuff. So it's a really thorny issue.
I want to definitely. I've got a couple of ideas around this, and they're all centered on like remaking theater as kind of an event like experience. And I think that's going to warrant a longer conversation. But I know what gets people my age, my friends, to show up to something that's happening in the community is when it really feels like it matters. It's an event. There is a thing before that you can do. There is usually some kind of photo opportunity that's kind of allowing you to share this experience with the digital world, which is a very important element, I think, of how you're thinking about your theater making experience in 2025. And then also making sure you have something at the tail end, that you don't just leave people to go into the abyss and never connect with you again. So I want to have a longer conversation. Alex, we're adding this to the docket. We're going to have a whole episode about this, because I think you're right, Mark. It is one of the issues in the arts world right now is how do you replace the audience and the donors with that next generation?
Almost every one of those ideas is exactly what Toni said. Every one of them. I have a list of 7 ideas, and every single one of them is about making it into an event. So you're brilliant, Toni.
You're too kind, Mark.
All right. Well, we're still in the middle of our Colorado headliners, so I'm just going to move on into my next one. Is this comes from the Fremont Civic Theater, which I don't think I've heard anything from in a while, but they're doing a show at the historic Rialto Theater in Florence, which is down near Colorado Springs, called Rex's X's, so March 13th through 16th. So short run, but it sounds like just kind of a kooky comedy, a Southern fried midlife crisis comedy. So sounds like one of those kinds of things. So if you're down in the Springs area, check that out at the historic Rialto, March 13th through 16th.
Another comedy for you over in the Silverthorne area is the book club play being produced by Theater Silco. It opens March 8th and runs through the 23rd. And it's a comedy about books and the people who love them. The Arvada Center produced this in the Denver metro area just a couple of years ago. It was a pretty slick production of it. It's about this book club who becomes the subject of a documentary. And the leader, Anna, is very controlling. But when a new member comes into the group, he kind of shakes everything up and reveals a lot of dynamics that were lying just underneath the surface. That there's a lot of tension that arises from that. It's a lot of conflict. It gets very wild by the second act, but it's a very fun play. So if you're in the Silverthorne area, consider checking out the book club play.
Cool. All right, my last one is Turn of the Screw. This is going to be at the End Center in Colorado Springs, March 13th through April 6th. So this is based on a Henry James novella. It's kind of a ghost story about an unsuspecting governess and her 2 enigmatic young charges. So there's horrors and a raving woman and all kinds of stuff like that. And it's in the smaller theater there at the End Center. So that sounds like a fun one, March 13th through April 6th.
My final headliner for this week is The Menagerist by Buntport Theater in Denver.
Can't wait.
This is their satirical take on the glass menagerie that deconstructs the play's problematic notions of disability. It's being created by Buntport Theater's 5-person ensemble, of course, but it's being done in collaboration with Ragan Linton, who is a disabled theater artist and former Family Theater Company artistic director. So I really, really am looking forward to this. I will be there opening night, and so I'll share my thoughts on it on the pod next week. Alex, you're going to be there as well?
I will be there with bells on. Yeah, this sounds it's really cool the way Buntport does such great stuff on their own. But it's cool the way they're starting to reach out and involve some other theater artists in this stuff. And this sounds like a great collaboration. It's wonderful to have Ragan back in Colorado as well.
All right, so that is it for this week's headliners. Now we are going to throw it to Alex's interview with the folks at Millibo Art Theatre to hear more about its upcoming festival, The Lost Years.
Great. All right, we are here with Birgitta DePree from Millibo Art Theatre in Colorado Springs. Birgitta, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
I'm delighted. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about something coming up at the MAT, as they call it, in March. It's a play festival, but I know you will have just finished a run of She Dies at the Savoy. So, that's as we record today. It hasn't happened yet, but when people hear it, it will be past. So I just wanted to ask, how did that go? It's apparently people are just loving it. It's a wonderful show.
It has been so much fun. It is a comedic introduction to opera. There's a legitimate pianist and a legitimate, amazing soprano. And then Jim and I are the two illegitimate clowns.
Right.
People have really enjoyed it and felt welcomed into that world of opera. And we've had fun. It was 17 operas in 80 minutes with about 25 different opera deaths.
Wow. Yeah, I know our reviewer, April Took, really loved it. She's a big fan of Matt, so I think she gets to most of your shows, which is great.
We have the best patrons in town, I have to tell you.
Yeah. So I wanted to, is there any chance that you'll be reprising that since it was kind of a short run?
It's a piece that we did 12 years ago, and we wanted to bring back because we enjoyed it so much, and we reworked it. And it's something that we are exploring taking to other places. Like we're talking to some people up in Aspen right now that we might take it there, maybe a theater festival. It's had such great appeal and have brought people such joy, and ourselves too, that we thought, oh, okay, let's figure out how to take it beyond Millibo's walls.
Right. And so your soprano, Judith Shea Comstock, is she in Colorado, Musselton?
She is. And she's traveled all over singing, but she's located here now. And there are not many divas, and she really is an amazing, in the best sense of that term, that would be as playful as she is, and throwing herself on the ground and doing being part of the comedy is just great. And then she's sublime. She sings, and then everybody just is so moved by the beauty of her delivery.
Great. Well, I guess we can hope that She Dies comes back around. But also, so the festival is called The Lost Years. It's coming up in March, and we'll get to that in just a sec. But I wanted to ask a little bit about the Millibo Art Theatre itself. I think it's fair to say there's no other place like it in Colorado. It's very unique. Yes. Yeah. And it's been around for quite a while. Can you just give us the kind of the quick history of the theater and what it's all about?
Sure. We've been around since that it sort of got dreamed up in 2001. And both Jim and I are performers. Jim sort of traveled with a solo clown show for years. I sort of more traditionally trained and doing sort of repertory work. And wanted to create a place where we could showcase new work and work for family audiences as well. And both of those ideas are concurrently happening. We have a children's series and an adult series, and so we this idea came, and then all this amazing community support sort of helped it flourish. And so we've been around for 23 years now, and wow. It's unbelievable to us. And we've had the most amazing sort of people come in and out of our lives, artists, staff, partnerships with the community, because, it sort of germinated out of an idea that Jim and I had, but it would never have survived this long without the amazing community support that we get.
Right. And you have your own space too. What's the venue itself like?
It's great. It was built in the 50s. It was initially a church. And then sort of was in transition, was a yoga studio and things. And they sort of came to us and said, would you like to turn this into an art center? At first, our response was no, because it just seemed so overwhelming. But then again, the community support, and we turned this into a 109-seat venue with a really nice rehearsal studio downstairs, intimate setting. We can do circus. The ceilings are high. We're located in the Ivywild neighborhood. There's the Bristol Brewery next door, the principal's office. So and in this area in sort of southern Colorado Springs is becoming more developed. And so we feel like we're part of a community that's growing.
Yeah, it is a great area. I've been to the principal's office. That's the old school they turned into like a food hall kind of place, right?
Yeah. And the principal's office has great coffee and amazing cocktails. The last place, the theater we had, the space we had before this was next to a car mechanic, so it was not quite as charming.
All right. Well, that's so cool. Well, all right. Well, let's talk about this play festival. So, my understanding it is really we are coming up on the 5th anniversary of COVID. It's hard to believe. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it was right around this time that things were starting to heat up, and so this play festival, the Lost Years, focuses on that. So, what are some of the things you have planned for this festival?
Well, we put out a call to Colorado artists who had sort of lived through that experience and wanted to sort of comment on it through the short play format. So our request was for plays within the sort of 10-minute genre, more or less. And we have a variety of things. We have a farce called Cocky, which is about actually the virus is like a boxing champion and his coach. And so this this idea of the virus wanting to get bigger and stronger. And so that's sort of a fun farcical look at it. We have a play called 18, which sort of features a mother and a daughter, and the daughter's turning 18 and she's quarantined in her room, and sort of the young person's experience or a family experience of this. Then we have Here Comes the Sun. It's a one-woman monologue, sort of, addressing many different aspects of it, but the loneliness and sort of the how we deal with this kind of, the safety measures we had to take. Stay Calm and Panic. This was Cameron Eichmeyer's play, which is great because Cameron came to us with this idea. He's a playwright in the area, and he thought we do short works festivals in a variety of ways, and he said, "Hey, let's take this theme and run with it," and we did. And then there's a week one, sort of a outrageous look at sort of the lengths to which we go to cope with COVID. And what's the other one? Stay Calm and Panic, which is sort of a wild farce in and out of all the different types of people and how sort of they're outdoors and on the hiking trails and who they are. So it's definitely an eclectic evening. We have an amazing cast, directors from the community coming in to direct. And, I think it has an interesting take on this experience, which I think we're still processing as a community. I don't know how your life was, Alex, during the COVID days, but, we all got through it somehow.
Yeah, it seemed at the time like it was going to be like that forever somehow, and it changed so fast.
It did. And then all the sort of different ways we told the story of what happened and retold that story and invented different stories of how it was. And it's, and I think really good theater doesn't give you answers. And I don't think this festival will give you answers, but I hope it gives you some really good questions to ask or things to reconsider or conversations to have about what actually did happen and how did we get through it.
Right. What is your take on how theater world has, dealt with COVID since those early days 5 years ago? It seems like it's been kind of all over the place. I don't know that there's been like one, any really big impactful things that have been written about it. I'm sure there's some that I'm not thinking of, but there's certainly been some. But anything that stands out to you that kind of, tick that zeitgeist about the whole COVID experience?
I'm not sure. I don't think, and nothing comes to mind right away. And I think in some ways hitting it on the nose or dealing with it sort of directly feels, I don't feel we're ready for that. We don't have the perspective yet. So, which is why I, in some ways, appreciate these smaller plays that come at the experience from very different points of view.
Yeah.
And I think if someone thinks they have a handle on it, that might not be the most interesting play.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's a million different stories and, it's not over yet. People are still getting COVID and,
it's very real for us. Our daughter has long COVID and the consequences are very real for this young person. And, we lost one of our actors an older actor, he died of COVID, and we named our outdoor stage after him, Charlie Ammons. And I think trying to get perspective is what we're trying to do. Not give the perspective, but trying to find a multitude of ways to enter into this.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like you said, you're not going to get your arms around the whole thing
Absolutely not.
in any way. It's kind of like, still telling stories about World War II from, it's an
Right.
endless source of narrative ideas. Sort of similar in a way in probably many years. And also, the whole, this Trump 1 and 2 administrations that kind of overshadow, or the whole thing is just going to be endlessly chewed over.
Yeah, right. And I think it's important for us to chew it over. It's changed who we are. It's definitely made us think about our communities in different ways. And like I said, I think theater should have us asking those really interesting questions, and hopefully this festival does. And it will be fun, and in a way that, fun. Some of the plays are sort of heartwarming, but there's a sense of comedy as well. I think it'll be a rich night of theater, or afternoon, whichever one you come to.
Right. All right. Hey, while I have you here, Birgitta, let's talk a little bit what else is coming up at the Millibo Art Theatre in, I don't know, say the spring or late winter.
Yes. So we always, we have a children's series. And for that children's series, we have a great wild show with the most ridiculous title called Ship This Wet Gift. And I know.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah, what is that? It's not Peter Rabbit. But we saw this show in New York last year, and it's a one-woman clown show. And it's the loveliest engagement with a young audience. And she's so fun, and she interacts with the audience, and she explores sort of a variety of sort of frustrations that we might have as human beings and how we deal with them. And she engages the audience in it. It's a one-of-a-kind show and really beautiful. So that's coming up. And then in March, early March, and then in May, we have our children's, what we call our Millibo Circus, where we have our young circus performers along with some professional circus performers putting on a show. And that's just a blast and really fun and delightful. And then, and I'm kind of glad I got to be on this interview with you, because my husband, Jim, who is just can hardly speak right now because of his cold, but he is bringing back a solo show called Gods, Guns, and Pancakes, which he created 10 years ago. And it's an autobiographical look at his life in the circus. He was traveling with different circuses. And it's just, it's a beautiful piece that we worked on about 10 years ago. And we initially had thought it was going to be like a 5-person piece that Jim would write, but it worked out that it was this solo piece, and it is stunning. And I'm so excited to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's had quite the storied career in circus stuff, and you've been along the ways as well. So
yeah, hanging on to his coattails and he to mine.
So Jim Jackson, the big driving force of Millibo. I'm sorry, Jim, that you couldn't come on, but maybe next time when you're well. Details, Lost Years. What day? What are the days and times?
Oh my goodness, Jim. It's 2 weekends. We do Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evening shows at 7:30, and a Sunday matinee at 2. And it runs March 13th through March 23rd. And tickets run about $25 to $28. And there are student rates as well if you bring a younger person. And I would say it's probably PG-13 enough.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Birgitta DePree, thanks so much for coming on the OnStage Colorado to talk about Millibo Art Theatre and the upcoming Lost Years Festival, reminding us of those crazy COVID years. Now 5 years, sort of, in the rearview mirror. We can still kind of see it, though.
Yeah.
Still dangling behind us like those cans on a newlywed's car.
It does still dangle. Alex Miller, it has been a pleasure. And thank you for supporting the arts in our community. And I think a legacy from COVID is that some people are still not coming back to the theater. That's still, so it's great that you promote theater in our community. And I think it is an amazing place to process and come together and be community.
It is indeed. Thank you so much, Birgitta, and Break Legs. I hope to make it down for that one.
Well, you're welcome. Just let us know. We'll save you a seat.
Thank you very much. Okay.
All right, Alex. Thank you.
That was a great conversation. Alex, thanks for taking the time to talk with the folks at Millibo.
Yeah. Birgitta was great. It's such a cool organization. It's sort of the very epitome of a wonderful, small live theater doing completely unique stuff. And the Springs is lucky to have them down there.
Totally. So what else is new or coming soon to the site that folks should check out, Alex?
Yeah, we've got definitely have some reviews coming up. Alice Caterlin was at Wonderbound's production of Agent Romeo, so we'll have that review. You're going to do one about Guys and Dolls at Vintage. Trip to Bountiful up in Fort Collins, and I think that's Bob Lou, and I think Warren Sherrill is directing that one. And Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed down at the Fine Arts Center in Colorado Springs. And then, I'll have a story about the Menagerie. So lots of stuff coming up.
Yeah, and next week on the podcast, we're still trying to line up interviews, but I know that we'll have something planned for you. So tune in next week. And Mark, I just wanted to say a quick thank you for taking some time to come on the OnStage Colorado podcast. It means a lot that you just take some time to chat with us. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up this week's podcast?
No, I just want to thank you guys for all the great work you do. There's just not a lot of folks covering the art scene in our area. So what you do is just indispensable. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for being a supporter of OnStage Colorado. It definitely helps keep the lights on, metaphorically. So, we appreciate it, Mark. So if you want to stay up to date on what's going on in theaters and comedy venues across the state, subscribe to our newsletter, The Theater Blast. It comes out every Thursday. It's free, and it really it's got all the latest reviews and links to calendar and all kinds of stuff going on. So check that out.
Yeah, and if you like what we're doing here on the OnStage Colorado podcast, please consider leaving a review wherever you are listening now, and be sure to tell the other theater lovers in your life about this podcast.
All right, well, thanks so much for listening. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Mark Ragan.
And I'm Toni Tresca, and we'll see you at the show.